Okay, today we've got a 350 Chev engine here. The block came in to the shop. Fellow was doing a rebuild but had a bit of a problem. What quite often happens, I think, is that the screw falls out of the carby and goes into the cylinder, gets punched around by the piston, punches its way through the piston, and as it bounces around the top of the crank, it does a little bit of damage to the bottom of the cylinder. You see down here it's done a little bit of damage. That's okay, that's not a problem at all, because we sleeve the cylinder with a B liner. It's a 93 thou wall section liner. We give it 2 thou interference and a step at the bottom, so it can't move. The other reason that the fellow didn't want the block, he was doing a high performance build, and he had access to another block, so he just used another block and gave me this one. There was a bit of a mark here that I was just a bit concerned about, so I drilled it out, found that it had a bit of a punch, but I ground it out, crack tested it and made sure there was no radial cracks coming out of the problem area. Then I tapped it with a tapered tap, a tapered plug, NPT tap, and a tapered plug, so that when I screw a tapered plug in there, it gets tighter and tighter because the tape is closing down on it, and that sealed that up, no worries. There's a good three or four threads there, plenty of wall there. It's away from the cylinder. It's not in any critical area or anything like that. When I put it in, I cleaned it up and everything. Of course, I put some epoxy. You're not going to see in there, but there's some epoxy in there. So the whole thing's. I put epoxy on the thread and screwed it in. I put epoxy over the top of the plug in the water jacket there, so that's well and truly sealed in. The other thing that I've noted with this block, and it's fairly typical of Chevs and Windsors, small blocks and Windsors, and even Holds to some extent, there's a tiny little mark, little crack running from the bolt hole out to the water jacket. That's fairly typical. You've got to keep in mind these are 30-year-old blocks. If you don't want that type of cracking, you really need to go and buy a new block. Spend a couple of grand on a new block. I have crack tested the block all over, and they're not showing up with the electromagnetic crack testing gear we've got, so they're probably superficial and certainly they don't go down very far, so I'm not too worried about that. This cylinder's the one that's got the sleeve in it. You can barely see the sleeve. It's gone in really nice. The block's been bored to 40 thou oversize, and honed, of course, and then surfaced, square decked. Actually made a little video on this one, you can follow. The threads, the head bolt threads have all been, run a tap through them to clean the threads out. They're all good to go. Lifter bores have all been honed, oil galleries cleaned, everything like that. Now, I always check the main tunnel, and quite frankly the easiest way to check the main tunnel for alignment and size is just to close and hone it. So I cleaned up all the registers, stripped the caps back about half a thou, and then just lightly run the line hone through the tunnel, and that gets everything back onto size and alignment. So that's all good to go. Got some new cam bearings for it. Con rods, these are just a set of Chev con rods, 5.7s. Been stripped, hot tanked, sandblasted, and then again I close and hone. Well, I push my ARP rod bolts in there. These are the Wavelock rod bolts, 3/8 rod bolts. And then we close and hone them. Again, we strip the cap and the rod back just a little bit. That makes the hole smaller. Tension the bolt up, and then re-hone them back to size. So you know that your main tunnels are the right size, and you know your rod bores are the right size. And it's just it's a lot of work, but it's good. What you have to do. These rods have been balanced, so the top weights are all made the same, and then the bottom weights are all made the same. Information is put into put on a chart. That information is put on a chart where you work out what your weights would be for the bob weights that go onto the crankshaft when you balance it. So this crankshaft's been balanced according to those piston and rod weights, and also the rings and bearings and so on. Crankshaft's been hot tanked, sandblasted, acid tanked. It's been ground on the mains 10 thou and ground on the big ends 10 thou. Oil holes all been radiused and cleaned out, of course, and then again, like I say, it's been balanced. It wasn't too bad. The piston weights, these new piston weights are pretty close to the old piston weights, so it didn't take a lot of work to balance it. So that's a really nice crankcase actually. Pistons are JCC pistons, Taiwanese pistons. A good squeeze cast, steel strutted piston, do nice and strong. There's no problem with them there at all. Rings, good set of cast rings. I've got Clevelite mains for it in 10. I've got Durabond cam bearings in standard, and I've got a TDC, which is a Japanese company, big ends in 10 thou, and a new rear main seal. So HNO4O. So yeah, this engine will go together now, and I'll take a quick bit of it later. 350 Chev build. It's all in, pistons are all in, crank and Cranks in, crank went in nice. Deck heights are sitting about 23, 24 thou, which is standard for 350, so it's all back to standard spec. Square decked, so the decks have been machined square with the main tunnel. Pistons all go up and down as they should, not a problem there. Spins over really nice, really consistent. Big ends are all tensioned up, so it's been assembled with engine oil, grease on the bolts, and assembly lube, high zinc, high ZDDP assembly lube on the bearings. Rod bolts are tensioned and also checked for stretch, because they're ARP rod bolts. When I'm machining the crank, one other thing I do is just give the flywheel flange face just a tiny touch, just to make sure that's true, so take a bit of thou off that. Mains are all closed and honed, big ends are closed and honed, new rod bolts, sandblasted, cranks all sandblasted. It's all good to go. It's going to be a bloody good block, this one. So yeah, you're ready now for your cam. Got new cam bearings in it, so you're ready for your cam, lifters, timing gear, put all your tinware on, bang your heads on, and you're off and racing. So no, it's come up really well, this. I'm very happy with it.